We're looking at trade over a 2 to 3 year time horizon. What's the macro context in which trade will develop?
No, thanks for the questions. It's so far I would say trade has been resilient, surprisingly resilient. Given all the shocks and tensions we have seen. I guess looking ahead, there is a question of how sustainable it is in the face of all this fragmentation we are seeing, and of course the current crisis is a manifestation of that. And I would also tend to unpack different parts of trade. I mean, energy is a key component and a key dimension, which has issues and challenges on its own, I would say, and is also kind of interrelated with the question of the green transition and what type of energy we want, energy security. So this is I think energy as a set of questions that are on their own, and then there is a more general question of trade, and also I would say more than a decline of trade is perhaps more a reshaping of trade. Trade rules and so on, but also, and we heard today in the roundtable, there's also the question of that now we need more redundancy, so we need more like resilience, and this is costly. So we made gradually go in a situation where trade is gradually more costly. Also, all these shocks have taught a lesson to firms that they need to prepare. And this preparation will put some sand in the wheels of trade, and this is going to be possibly a gradual process. So we had to expect this also to happen.
So you're expecting fragmentation of trade because of geopolitics,
or relocation, yeah,
and a reshaping of trade,
yeah.
And high cost of trade because of the need to build in redundancy.
Right.
What about the impact of technology? Can that help smooth some of that trade? Can that remove some of the friction?
I guess you can see, on the financial side, you can see probably more seamless international payments. Now we have these new digital assets, and it's still a bit untested. So we are not seeing this happening in big scale so far, but there is a lot of hope that it does. And on the technology side, I guess trade in services could pick up, certainly, which is in part also seen as a threat in some countries. But technology does allow increase trade in services. You can see already now that location matters less, and AI of course powers that potential at least.
You mentioned energy being a situation of its own. What's your outlook? Do you believe that the spike in oil prices, the volatility in the market, will accelerate the green transition, or does it just make the energy, our calculation, vastly more complex?
So, I'm a firm believer in the green transition, so I do hope that this will foster the green transition, and I think long term is going to be in the best interest of Europe. I always say that this is a personal view, that we should do the green transition not only for climate change but also for our energy security. Of course, we must be aware, and we must be realistic. The green transition is also has its own challenges. So one is the intermittency of renewables. So we still haven't solved the technological, which is again a technological question of intermittency, and we have also some sectors that are very difficult to decarbonize. Take air travel or others. So there are sectors that seems to be fundamentally undecarbonizable, to use this term. And so how do we deal with those? So we probably will still need a fraction, which is probably a smaller fraction of energy still coming from fossil sources. And there is also the geopolitical question, which is very important, as we are seeing for fossil, but is not irrelevant also for renewables. We have all other types of dependencies. I would still argue that the dependencies in the renewable sector are less fundamental than for fossil, but still exist. So this is a picture. But overall, I think in the long term, I still believe that green transition is advantageous, and even more so, I believe that now, seeing what we are witnessing now. Yeah.
The EU has done a couple of substantial trade deals recently. The EU-India trade deal which a few years ago many thought would just not happen, and the EU-Mercosur trade deal. So is the EU forging meaningful, enduring, new long-term alliances to drive trade?
So I have to kind of make the premise that I'm not a trade, expert on economics, in the sense I don't actively do trade deals. I mean, ECB, as you know, is not, doing trade deals. So I can only second guess. Certainly, it is a part of more diversification of trade links, and we did have already a few years ago the big shock of Brexit. I mean, the UK was traditionally our first trading partner, the first. Speaking of the euro area now, so the first trading partner has been the UK traditionally, and now, of course, this is going down substantially. Now the US has a higher tariff. The US tariffs also be put a bit in a context. I mean, it's true that the actual tariff rate has increased dramatically, but if you look at both like the time series, but also the international tariffs, we have to be fair, the US still does not have a high FAT tariff. So I don't think necessarily that trade in the US is going to be hugely disrupted. I mean, of course, in some sectors it might be, because some sectors have higher tariffs. The question of uncertainty, of course, there's been a lot of volatility, policy volatility there. So a lot of uncertainty. Still now, we don't know if the tariffs will be kept or not. So trade policy, not only about the level of tariffs or non-tariffs, is also the uncertainty around it, and this has been a big contributor. So in this sense, this is. So I guess the European Commission is certainly trying to, has learned a lesson of Brexit, and the US is certainly trying to have deeper trade integration with other regions of the world. And I think is a very wise strategy.
Just final question on the macro outlook, which does seem to have changed over the last 4 weeks because of the conflict in the Gulf. In terms of inflation, in terms of interest rates, in terms of growth, are you now relatively optimistic, pessimistic, looking at a 2-year time frame?
So I personally think it's not going to be 2022 again. We all hope that it is going to be less dramatic than that. I mean, and the key difference is the starting point. So to some extent the shocks of 22 and now are similar, but the starting condition is different. So we hope the second factor will prevail over the first factor, and a lot will depend on what will happen. I think nobody knows. I mean, we already know that the disruption in terms of oil and gas is going to be durable, because even if the war is ended today, there is a pipeline of effects that we know already that is going to happen. But I think, I personally believe that we are going to avoid another 22, and hopefully it will be a more favorable environment. But of course, we have to see what happens on the geopolitical side.
Must leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.